Well, welcome to the episode in the show, Kylie. It is such an honor to have you on. I'm really excited to share your journey and your business and all the things about you. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
So for those of you, I'm going to stop. The one thing I wanted to ask you was how to pronounce your surname because I don't want to mess it up. Is it Boreham?
Boreham.
Boreham. Okay.
Boreham. Yes.
We're going to start again. Now we're going to slide through. No problems at all. Yeah. From here, I'm just going to get a mark for I don't even know if there's a timer on here. I was going to help the podcasters out by giving them a time mark, but that's okay.
Something like this, and then we'll go. Like we'll know when we do that.
All right. All right. And 3, 2. Kylie, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I am so excited to dive into your journey, your amazing business, and everything that you have to share as a woman who is very much alive and living her mission in the world. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to dive straight in. And the first thing I want to know is if there was an animal that best represents your personality, your way of being, which animal would that be and why?
That's a very difficult question. And it probably, I reckon I would be a bit of a hybrid. There's elements of me that are very much a puppy. I'm very easily excited. I love being around people. I'm very curious. I love trying new things. But there's also, I guess, equally a part of me that I love to be alone. I love to just chill. I'm a deep thinker. I love to process my thoughts. I don't know an animal that suits
an owl, like a reflective, you like to process. So you're like a puppy owl. And I personally really love that you did the hybrid because I think the truth of it is we're all hybrids. And that's a big part of my message with this whole womanhood. And actually one of the reasons that after stumbling across your amazing brand on Instagram and doing a little bit more research, I did stalk you. I was like, wow, Kylie is the perfect woman to interview because you are in the embodiment of so many elements of your wholeness, which we want to explore today on the show. So I get that, a puppy owl. Playful and childlike, which to me is, inside the whole womanhood, the gypsy, the goddess, and the queen. That's very much that gypsy energy, creative and adventurous and excitable. And then the queen energy is that reflection and where are we going and really taking that internal wisdom of self. So I love that. I love it. It's
yay.
And so the second question, just to kick us off and warm us all up and have everyone get an insight into you would be, if you could have a superpower, just one, which superpower would you choose and why?
Oh, I guess my whole purpose of the business that I've created is to help women to feel good. So if I could do that magically, yes, that would be my superpower.
I love that. And then help them to do it for themselves, right? That's so good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go straight there.
Have a mirror to hold up to women so that they can see their beauty and everything that's amazing about them.
Amen. I'm with you on that. So Kylie, tell us a little bit and start wherever you like, but tell us how you came to have, Bham Powerpants. Tell us about that journey. Tell us your story, if you will.
My story? Yeah, sure. And I guess, always to start off in childhood, because it's always a big part of our story, right?
Absolutely.
And I was really blessed to have a charmed childhood. I had very loving, supportive parents, brother, sister. I grew up in Melbourne, so we spent our weekends at the AFL. There was a big sporting element to my childhood. Loads and loads of happy memories. And perhaps I guess I left home pretty young, not because it wasn't a great environment, but I was that adventurous kind, wanted to do my own thing, do things by myself. And that led to me moving to the other side of the world. So I spent the majority of my 20s in London. I fell in love over there and dragged a British guy back with me. And we landed, so I grew up in Melbourne, but we landed in Sydney. And fast forward a couple of years, that relationship ended quite violently. And I was, I guess, at another crossroad in my life where, I was yearning to be at home around my family and friends and my support network in Melbourne. But again, this stubborn, adventurous side of me, I wanted to prove myself. So I kicked on in Sydney, and within a few months, I actually met my now husband, and the rest is history. You know, happily married to an amazing man. We've got 3 little ones, so they're now 2, 5, and 7.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess my journey to Bham began when I was on parental leave with my little girl, and I was, I guess, at the crossroads where a lot of women find themselves after having their children. So, you know, I know growing up it was always, I'd imagine, who am I going to marry? How many children am I going to have? And you know, it was this, you know, conversation I was having with my husband about, you know, our years of baby making are done. You know, we decided we weren't going to have any more children. We'd surgically made that decision. And, you know, I was thinking, well, what next? I hadn't thought of my life beyond these years. So, you know, I thought I'd been reading a lot of Brene Brown and wanting to do things differently and push myself outside of my comfort zone. And the business idea came to me. And I remember discussing it with my dad, who's always been a great business mentor to me. And, you know, he kind of laughed and said, you know, that's really difficult. So, you know, my stubborn nature, game on. And I started slowly developed a business plan. Things started falling into place. It did take a long time to go from idea to business plan to launch. It was about 18 months end to end. But, you know, I found a way to tie in my passion for ethical fashion and in ensuring that, you know, the products we buy are great for the planet. No one is suffering when they're, you know, no one's being paid unfairly, treated poorly when they're making our garments. And of course, I found a way to raise funds for female survivors of violence, because that was something that was very close to my heart.
Yeah, so I want to pause there because we might have some listeners who don't know about, and one of the things I really wanted to do with this podcast was really shed some light on your amazing brand, which is Bham Powerpants, but it is Bham, BHAM Pants. And can you just, in a nutshell, explain to anyone who's listening, and of course, go and look it up on Instagram, start following it's, you know, as a business coach and someone who's worked in multiple domains, from service to product to online, all of it. So much of what I love, there's so much fused into the creation of your business in particular, which we'll dissect a little later. But I just want people to know, what are we talking about? Because, you know, when you're listening, it's like, what are they talking about? What is it? So in your own words, what is the brand, and what can people, why would they buy it, et cetera, et cetera? What are they getting?
Yeah, sure. So the first product for the brand is Powerpants. So these are ethically made organic cotton underwear, and they're designed to be super comfy. But the key part of them is each is printed with a secret affirmation. And they come with a little affirmation card. So we dig deep into each affirmation. What does it mean to be brave, or to feel beautiful, or to feel blessed and grateful? So we dig deep into all of those affirmations. We do the research into the brain science behind those affirmations, a few hacks about how to get all the good feels. And we wrap up that little affirmation card with the underwear. They come available as, you know, to purchase as a one-off. They make a lovely gift. We can do packs, multiple packs, and we can also do a subscription. So you can purchase a subscription where you get a fresh pair of Powerpants with a new affirmation every single month.
You know, and on so many levels, it's just a big yes for me, because I'm a big believer in particularly the most important of the affirming statements, the I am statement, which is the identity of self. So when I saw your brand, I'm like, this is genius. So, and I love that you do all of that. I love it's not just printed. It's not the same one. I love even that people can't pick the affirmation, that it's a secret one, that they get what they get, because it's almost like when you do a deck of cards, right? Sometimes what you get is what you need, not what you want. And I love that when women are going to their, to their knicker drawer in the morning to get dressed, life might be hectic, the kids might be calling, but they're going to see that. And in that moment, what we see and what we read, that, we build our world with our words. I say this all the time. And so in that moment, it's, yeah, I am beautiful. Yes, I am powerful. And it will just, even if you're still rushing, I know that your soul is going to have that little smile. And we just, in a busy day, shot in that little puff of like positivity and remembrance, real remembrance of who and what we truly are as women. So I love it. And then from a business model, I love that you have the subscription, because it's genius. Number one, from a entrepreneurial CEO standpoint, genius. But also for the women listening, I know how many women love online shopping, love to get stuff in the mail. And I remember years and years ago, I worked with a financial person, and they were like, it's okay to have your little shopping addictions, but make it things like knickers or, underwear, small investments rather than really large investments all the time, because you're going to use them and, you kind of feel like you're getting that luxury treatment, but it's not a high end ticket price that's going to derail potentially your financial goals. So clever. Now, you also mentioned quite a number of things that I'd really like to pull out, if it's okay with you, and dive into separately. The first of which, and you touched on it inside of your first relationship. Was that a marriage, Kylie? The one that ended?
No. 5-year relationship.
It was a long-term relationship. Yes. So I wanted to speak to that because, I've raised a lot of money in the past and been really heavily involved in what's known in the part of Australia that I live in. It's Women's Legal Services Queensland, which runs this epic charity event every year called Dancing CEOs. You should do it. And you do awesome. This, you get to be like Beyonce and live out your, dancing, but you have to do it in front of 1,000 people in City Hall in Brisbane, and you raise money. Anyway, the reason that this whole charity exists is because 1 in 3 women experiences domestic violence, which to me at the time was shocking. Like the stats on that are shocking. And I know that if we pull up all the stats, and I'm sure you know them too, they're horrific. And, right now in Brisbane, we had a very, very, very tragic, heavily horrendous domestic violence incident literally just down the road from where I am last week. And this is a very real and very alive, but often not openly discussed. And that's the topic. And so a lot of women attach shame to it. A lot of them think it's their fault. And these are strong, intelligent, powerful women. And even after the event last week, someone I had known from, I call it a past life, when I was married, to my first husband, probably 12 years ago, I met her and her husband. I knew them through different events. And then after I split, many years later, they split. And I'd kind of watched them both on social media. But after this event last week, she shared for the first time on social media, she said, shared that she'd been an intense victim of domestic violence, for years inside her relationship. And it was interesting for me because there was that, oh, wow, I didn't know that response in me, but also the deep compassion that women have, because we don't want to necessarily cast shade or, all the things. And yet this was real and very true for her. And we should get to own that about ourselves. So what I wanted to know is a couple of things, and I'm just going to sit back and let you take the wheel and wherever you need to go with it. But there are women listening who have been in relationships where they're not treated in the ways that they deserve to be treated. And I want to ask you a couple of things. One is, how do you think you came to be in that situation? Why did you stay as long? But most importantly, how and why did you eventually leave? Like, what were the learnings now upon reflection?
Yeah. And I would just, before I begin, you mentioned shame. And that was a very, very big thing that I held on to for a decade. So, this happened in my life just over 10 years ago, and it's only been in the last 12 months that I've been able to share it out loud. So people that were close to me, like your friend, they may have been in my life, they may have seen me with this partner and never have imagined anything or the relationship ending in the way that it did. And also friends that I made since that time who became very, very close and dear to me. It was a part that I hid away that I didn't want to share with them because, you know, you fear the judgment and you feel really ashamed of what happened to you. But I guess a big turning point in my healing was, you know, one part was addressing the terror that I was holding on to from the terrifying incident that happened with my ex. But it was also recognizing that I'm not the person that it happened to, or I'm not someone that allowed this sort of thing to happen. And I think changing the way I spoke to myself about that was really key. And I think if a lot of people start to see themselves not as a victim, but as a strong woman that has survived a violent relationship, that a lot more people will be open to talk about it. And I find that the more people talk about and share their experiences, the more other people can recognize that it's happening in their relationship and find the strength to move on.
I couldn't agree more. And
yeah.
And what I'd love to know though is I think that's very important for all of us. And this is, you know, if you've never suffered domestic violence, and I have not, I have had controlling partners, but never domestic violence, although I have suffered my own shame. And I speak about that in other places, you know, around certain coping mechanisms that I developed post-divorce and all of the things. And shame is a very low frequency of all of the frequencies of all of the emotions and feelings we can experience. Shame is the lowest. It's at a 20, which is why it bears the most weight and why in so many of my programs we do a lot of shame releasing, because very often it's what's pinning us from our fullest expression. But I want to take you back, if you can, just potentially for anyone who is listening, because when we're in it, with hindsight, we have that 20/20 vision, you know, and we can reframe things and we can kind of see the lesson or the gift that was really garnished with time. But I think it's important to remember, and some of us, again, it may not be domestic violence, but it might be a pattern that we're allowing to persist in our life, or it might be, you know, a shame story that we're holding in and we think it means something about us, so we don't step beyond it. But when you were inside that relationship and you weren't leaving, like if we can even go to that stage, when you were staying, knowing that you're not that person anymore, knowing you don't hold those beliefs anymore and you have ascended from them, what was the key belief, do you think, that kept you in that relationship, or the key thing? What was holding you there when really you wanted out?
Yeah, and I'd probably say for me, which would be a lot like other women in the situation, it's like a frog boiling in water. So, you know, it starts off with very, very subtle things. And typically that is disrespect. And one of the sayings I've heard is that disrespect doesn't always end in violence, but violence always starts with disrespect. And, you know, I look back very early on and there were subtle things, then there were red flags, and then there were stop signs. And in my heart, you know, I loved this person and there was this emotional roller coaster with them. So when things were great, they were amazing. And I felt like a queen. I was, you know, zipped away to Paris for weekends, to New York. We were, you know, we had so much fun together. I found him so hilariously funny. He was charismatic, would light up a room. He was just, you know, there was parts of him that I was deeply in love with. And then there was this really vulnerable side of him. And I think a lot of men that are disrespectful or violent towards women are hurting, you know. They're people that are, you know, potentially never learned how to process, recognize and control their emotions. So, you know, I felt like he needed me. And whenever he, and I will say now, it wasn't violent until the end. It wasn't until he'd lost his control over me that he turned physically violent. Before then, it was just disrespecting me. treating me badly, making me feel stupid. So, I think that that's where I was, you know, in this boiling water, that I was slowly losing all of my confidence, and, you know, taken away from my support network. I felt quite isolated. I didn't want to share to people how I was being made to feel. You know, that was something I was really embarrassed about. And a lot of women will hide that away, you know, whether it's financial or verbal abuse. You know, they don't want to tell their family that this is happening to them, because I guess then you feel like you need to do something about it.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And I think you have nailed you've nailed it right on the nose with the frog in boiling water, because that's so often how all of our slips away from alignment occur. We just allow that deviation. And I just ran a program on the weekend completely about sovereignty. And on the second day, we talked very much about boundaries. And if you don't hold those boundaries, they just become eroded. Or if you had none to start with, and if you were raised in a family where you didn't need them, you know, if you weren't raised to need protective mechanisms, and you think everybody is raised to be loving and kind, then the one time they're not, you're like, oh, and we make excuses. And because we're so full of love, potentially we justify on their behalf, you know, and we hold a hope that they're going to do better, but then they don't. And then, like you say, we don't tell the friends, because ironically, we also have this crazy reality that all relationships are meant to be fairy tale perfect. And if they're not, then we didn't get the right one. You know, like there's this illusion that, you know, relationships don't take work and that there isn't challenges. But if you had been sharing openly the stuff, even in the verbalization of it, there perhaps would have been a greater affirming to you that actually, you know what, that does suck. And then if you didn't say it, a friend would say, you know what, Kylie, no, you deserve better. And even initially, if you hadn't agreed over time, because very often for me with boundaries that in a family or systemic arena aren't present, it's often been the like steadfast, like, are you joking, Marina? That is not okay behavior, from multiple other sources, that then has me go, oh, you know, like maybe I need to look at this, because it's not okay to let everyone take your money. You know, like other people would say no to that. So maybe you should say no to that, Marina. You know, but I was raised with generosity and all the things. So I agree with you. It's the little tiny kind of like tilts until suddenly we're in boiling water. And it's like anything, we develop the muscle to be there, but at some point we're like, I want out. So when you did finally say I want out, what would you say was the biggest thing that awoke within you, or the biggest thing that just said, that's it, I'm done?
Yeah, look, I would say there was a point of disrespect where he went one step too far, and it wasn't violence, it was just really bad behavior. And you know, at that point I knew, and there was a ring with diamonds, we will say, that was around at Christmas one year, and I said, look, let's make this a ring with diamonds. And I realized at that moment, I don't want to spend my life with this man. And I really recognized that I was not going to live my best life with him, and that he was really dragging me down. And it took a number of months from that point for me to get the confidence and spending more time with my girlfriends, and, you know, being a lot more independent and seeing what life would be like without him before, you know, I suddenly, not suddenly, before I spoke to him about it.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for, you know, I think I talk about the 5 stages of stuck in relationship to our dream life. And one of the most insidious stages that I find that particularly high functioning, high achieving, generally successful people get caught in is this stage of complacency. You know, where it's not so bad, but it's not great, but it's not so bad. And it's the not so bad that keeps us there, right? And one of the fastest ways to see if you're really happy is just go, if it doesn't change. Because the beautiful thing about humans is we have such an anchoring to hope, don't we? Like, it could get better. It might get better. He might improve. We might improve. We can do it, you know, and hope floats. Like, I mean, we hear this saying all the time. These sayings have, you know, foundational, you know, reasons for being. And I think that if you go, well, what if nothing changed? Like, even if it doesn't get worse, but it doesn't get better, is this really the standard and, you know, the path that I'm prepared to trade my entire reality for? And if in that moment, like you did with the wedding proposal or whatever it was, that suggestion of let's lock this in, and there's that nah that screams from within, that is telling you something. And to any woman that is listening in any arena of your life, and I work with a lot of women who are in careers they shouldn't be in relationships they shouldn't be in, you know, doing things for family or whatever it is that is kind of just selling their soul every day a little and a little, is if nothing were to change from this point and you're not satisfied or at least bloody really happy, then something's got to change. And the only person that can make that change, and I'm sure you'd agree, Kylie, with your experience, is you, right? Yes, we can get the support networks. Yes, we can reach out, but we have to decide that we're going to leave, or we're going to say no, or we're going to change something. Then we can seek help, but we need to decide. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think what stops a lot of women also from leaving relationships is this perception of failure when a relationship fails. And, you know, we all have this little fear of failure, and, you know, walking away, it's recognizing that walking away from a relationship that doesn't bring out the best in you is not failure. It's actually a real achievement.
Oh, Kylie, I know I'm here like miming, and no one who can see the video would understand, but I'm just like, amen, 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 amen. Yes, 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 yes. Word, word, word. Say it again, say it again. Because I mean, like my story is a 17-year very successful relationship, you know, with 2 beautiful children and a business that we did together, coming to an end in the eyes of the world seems like such a failure. And like we have to get rid of this illusion of like one love for life forever, because doing that is actually cheating us from what we're meant to have from our relationships, which is learning and attunement. You're amazing like this, and I come alive in mirror and match of you, yet here's how I get to unfold into even more of my wholeness, and you go do your thing, and then thank you for the lesson learning. And I think is it the Ariana Grande song, Thank You Next, which sounds really cold and heartless in some ways, but actually if you listen to the words, she's saying thank you for that learning, and then the next person, and thank you, because it isn't a one-time deal. And if we as women and as a society, like even I get really upset with the language around broken families and failed marriages, and I agree, like if we went and did anything else and tried and stuffed it up, like say we were cooking something and we cooked it in the kitchen and we tried it with 20% this and 40% that, and we're like, it's not quite right. And then we did it again and we started to, and after maybe 6 attempts, we nailed it. Everyone would be like, wow, look at their persistence and their commitment to really cultivating the best goddamn cake. And yet, if we have a relationship, we think, oh, well, I'm in this one, I better make it work. Like, why? That's like the first trial of the cake. Get out, write down your learnings, step into more of what you want to be and who you want to experience, and then call that in and go again and go again until you know what, you're eating the sweetest, most delicious, heart expanding cake, you know, which it sounds like you've done with your beautiful relationship now. So anyone who is listening, who is in a relationship that isn't lighting you up, we're not telling you to leave that relationship, but at least to tune in and know that it is possible to be in loving, connected, expansive relationships where you feel safe, where you feel respected, and where all your needs are met by yourself and your partner when you're unable to meet them for yourself, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I think that's important, feeling safe and respected in a relationship. I mean, that is just a hygiene factor. If you're not feeling safe and respected, then, you know, you really, really need to reconsider your relationship.
Absolutely. And do some work for yourself when you're outside that relationship, so you know what it feels like to be safe and respected by yourself, right? So then you can set those boundaries and allow that in. Now, Kylie, what I love though is coming out of that and then stepping into motherhood, which isn't that a whole identity shift, you know,
it is
stepping
indeed.
into motherhood. But I do love that you birth your business idea inside that container, because a lot of people, you know, masculine and feminine energies is something I'm super passionate about. And a lot of people tend to think that business is a very masculine domain, and what they fail to understand that the birthing of an idea is a highly feminine, not woman, but highly feminine energy. And so it doesn't surprise me that in the creation of very much human creation, you had all of these energies of like birthing and brewing and, you know, bringing to life an idea, an inspiration. So when that came to you, and then you decided, you obviously sat, I'm assuming, with it and really looked at your values, because very clearly on the Bham Power website, it talks about, and you're very transparent, and I salute you for that, about, you know, the ethical sustainability. And the other thing, and credit to you, and anyone who wants to go and check it out, do, but what Kylie doesn't do on the website, she doesn't say we're 1,000% this and we're certified. She very openly says, here's where we're at, and this is the best we can do. But if you want to go and look at these things, this is it. And we have sourced to the best of our ability these things, because I think so often people overstate and postulate almost from an ego standpoint of we're 100% this and we're 100% that, and becomes a bit of a judgment. Whereas to me, even the brand and yourself, and even the way you discuss your sustainability is like, hey, we're not perfect, but we're conscious and we're doing the best we can. We need more of that in business. So I salute you for that. But I want you to talk about, if you can, how the domestic violence and the ethicalness, and then even the positivity, really fused into what is quite obviously a very heart-centered business model.
Yeah, right. So I guess if we look at it sort of helping, and the way I like to articulate it is, you know, the mission of the business is to help women to find their power. And if you're a consumer of power pants, you know, finding your power is, you have the power to change the planet by being conscious about the items that you purchase. So if you're choosing brands that put the planet and people ahead of profits, you're able to change the world. And, you know, there is this big conscious consumerist movement that's really actually driven by women, which is really beautiful. So it's starting to slowly but surely change the world. And I think on the other side of that, it's empowering the women who are paid fairly. You know, when you're choosing products that are ethically made, it means that, you know, a lot of garment makers are women, and we're giving them the power with ensuring they're paid fairly and have good working conditions. There's financial empowerment, and that's giving them freedom to make choices about their lives. And back to, you know, the affirmations are another big part of it. You know, you've got the power to change your life by changing the way you speak to yourself. So, you know, if I go back to what I was discussing earlier, looking at myself as a strong survivor rather than a victim, you know, has really changed my life. Learning to speak kindly about myself, being, you know, down on my confidence at the end of my previous relationship, feeling worthless, you know, but starting to feel like I am worthy of love. I am worthy of good things in my life. I am beautiful. I am brave. Starting to change the way you speak to yourself can change your life. And then the element of women supporting women. So, you know, when it comes to supporting female survivors of violence, where for every pair of power pants sold, we donate $1 towards female survivors of violence in Papua New Guinea.
Yes.
And if I can talk to my experience here in Australia, so when everything happened with my ex, the justice system, I was lucky to have the justice system on my side. I had my family and friends rallying around me. I was provided with counselling. I was also, you know, financially independent. I was able to set myself up in life. You know, I had the resources that I need. You know, it was hard enough to build my confidence, but I had the resources I needed to get back on my feet. In Papua New Guinea, 2 out of 3 women, experience violence. And it's one of the most dangerous places in the world to be a woman. And I know, Marina, you spent some time there in your childhood.
I'm surprised that you know that. I was going to say, when I was doing the research, and I was like, that is interesting, another intersection. I lived in Papua New Guinea until I was 3. I did my first couple of years of school there. And my father was a pilot for Air Niugini, and we lived in Port Moresby on Air Niugini Hill. And of course, I didn't know at the time that all the barbed wire fences made us a compound, but we did leave because of the violence. And even I have memories of hiking when I was a child with my parents, and gunshots and violence, like it kind of everywhere we went. And to be honest, I remember crawling under the barbed wire fences to go and hang out with the women in the huts. My parents obviously did not know this at the time, and, pet with the snakes and things like that. So through the eyes of a child, it didn't seem dangerous. It was only later that I realized. And my sister, who is a pilot, doesn't anymore do the leg, but she was flying to Papua New Guinea and said to me, they're not actually allowed off the tarmac. Off the tarmac. Yeah. They have to stay on the tarmac just because of the volatility and the wildness and the tribalness of what's going on up there. And so, yeah, I love that, it raises a lot of questions though, because it's so systemic. I'm curious, with the money that the charity receives, how are they looking? What is their intention, or how are they looking to shift something that is so culturally ingrained there? It isn't uncommon up there, and not men and women aside, but if you disagree with someone, you would just chop them up. I mean, cannibalism is also very present still in Papua New Guinea. So yeah, part of me, I don't know if you ever sit with things like that, like the big pictures, like how do we solve it? Yeah. So what are they doing with the money? I'm just curious.
Yeah, look, I mean, they do some awareness campaigns, to shine a light on, gender-based violence. But they also have some financial empowerment projects. So one of the projects they have is Lucy Lights, where there's solar lights that are provided to women to go and sell into their communities, and that gives them
some power through financial. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously they have shelters set up for women to support women who are escaping violence.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, and this is not to turn this into like a feminist, angry feminist conversation, but the facts are the facts. And, it isn't that long ago in the history of humans that if you go and do the research, well, first of all, women were sold, as a dowry for marriage. We didn't have our own identity. If there was penalties against families, then, if there was a penalty against the woman who was under the ownership of a man, then the man would have to make good. But if the woman wasn't owned by a man, but had suffered as a result, it was just kind of, oh, well, that's all good because she herself didn't have the worth. So we have come a long way. And I know a lot of people feel like we do sit in a society where women are equal, but the truth is that's still not the case. And we see it even in our language. We see it in the fact that there's about 220 sexual slurs for the female genitalia, in contrast to approximately 20 for men. So there is just a lot of extra things that women have to deal with, which I think is why, women like yourself and I do feel very impassioned to do work in this space. And I know, men listen to this podcast, and I am certainly not a man hater. I love men. I love conscious men more than any kind of man. And women, brothers, sisters, we all do need to unite. And, I have a deep empathy too for the men in the world, because they have a lot to counterbalance against too. It's these extremes that we're taught. But it doesn't surprise me that in a culture without education, it would just be natural for them that she's not as valuable. And if I want to take out my anger, well, that's what she's there for, because it wasn't so long ago that was the same in every culture, until you go right back pre certain aspects of our society, or pre large institutions where women were more revered. Historically, it was the women that held the magic, the intuition, and even, I suppose, the power, you could say, inside of different societies. But anyway, we won't get into a massive history lesson. As you can see, I could talk about that for hours. I would love to know, as a female entrepreneur, and as a female entrepreneur to a female entrepreneur, there will be a lot of women listening, and men, who want to start a business. And there's all the things, the money, the fear, the risk versus return, do I leave my job? Will it be a failure? Will I faceplant? All the things. So I would love to know, what would be your biggest advice to someone who is thinking, has this calling, but isn't yet in it? What would you say to them?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. I think you have to be really passionate about what you're doing, because it's a huge amount of work. And you've got to be able to celebrate the little wins.
Yeah.
Like you're achieving, like you're on your way to achieving a big goal that's really, really important to you. I wouldn't get into it if it's all about the money, because there's a huge amount of work to do.
I would argue you could make money in a lot easier ways than particularly a heart-centered, business. It is going to take a lot of sweat and tears. I love that you said that it wasn't just do it, because if you don't have a strong why, right, you've got nothing to carry you through the tough times, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to, and we can avoid mistakes as best as possible through, coaches, learning, etc., good strategy. Having said that, there's still, we learn through trial and error. The best businesses do. So yeah, have a solid why, because that way the journey will be worth, the effort and the weight of it. I love that. What about,
you've got to have something to get you through the hard times. I mean, one thing that I've found is you have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone and do things that, frighten you. And to do that, you've got to feel like that it's worth it for something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's a calling. It's got to feel like a calling. That's not to say that people can't start businesses and make good money. But I think that the businesses that last and that get solid traction, and that eventually, it's like a baby, that eventually grow their own identity and their own following. This is certainly the kinds of businesses that I help keep people to launch. And having had one that sits inside a very competitive industry for going on 19 years, I feel justified in sharing that if that business isn't a living, breathing, good service giving being, you're going to do a lot of work for a long time. But just like anything, like building a baby, birthing a baby in those first few years, I would definitely say that first initial stage of entrepreneurship, there's that saying, I think it's something like the entrepreneur is someone who's prepared to work for a few years in a capacity that most people aren't, so they can have a lifestyle, the freedom, and even the sense of bliss, joy, and expansion that most people never will. And I would agree with that. That's certainly been my experience. I worked like a dog through my 20s. And, now I'm blessed to have a lot more balance. But, that was set in place by those years of hard work. And also looking back now, I would do things differently because I'm more expanded in my womanhood, and I would ask for more help. I really did soldier on like a lunatic a lot in those early days. So what about someone who's in the thick of it? So they have started their business, and maybe they're like, oh my gosh, I can't do it. It's too much. What would be your advice for in the workings? Like, what's the biggest lesson you've really learned that you're like, wow, when I started doing it that way, or when I looked at it that way, things got easier, things expanded, they grew, like in it?
Oh, I think it comes down to the way you talk to yourself, because if you're saying, I can't do this, this is too hard, you've just got to stop yourself. Everything is possible. You can work everything out. And sometimes I like to take a little break, do some meditation, whether it be a few hours off, just to get myself calm. And I just find taking a bit of a break sometimes, things start to unravel themselves, ideas come, things seem easier than they were. And it's also, constantly having a reminder of the reason that you're doing this. And I find sometimes I might be so involved in something and working really, really hard and making a lot of sacrifices with my family, because that's what you have to do. You miss out on special time with your family. And my husband, every now and then, he stops me and he says, remember why you're doing this. And you're no use to anybody if you're burnt out. It's no good for the business if you're burnt out, and it's no good for your family. So take a break, spend some time with us, recharge, and get back to it.
Super solid advice. I think I would back that 100%. So if the push is not rendering the results, it's time to reset. And in that reset, because sometimes it's like, I give that analogy, if you're driving home the way you know how to drive home and suddenly that road's blocked, I mean, you can sit there and you can vent all this energy, or you can just back it up, find a different route, or just chill out, just wait till the road clears, right? And then its systems go again, because everything is actually cyclical, not linear in business. I don't know if you've noticed that as well, but it comes in cycles, and our energy and inspiration comes in cycles. It is definitely the spiral as opposed to the line. So where to now for Bham Powerpants? Like, what's the big vision? I have to say, I was very excited on the website to notice that the G-string is coming, because as someone who lives in activewear with a booty, full briefs, I wear full briefs to go to sleep, to walk around the house in a t-shirt. And do you know what I mean? Like, I have my full brief pants, but 90% of my knicker collection is definitely thong. So I'm like waiting.
We went the full brief to start. It was our MVP, just to test the market and see what sort of response. And, people, what we've heard is that people love that they're organic cotton, that they're ethically made. They love the affirmations. But what we're hearing is different styles, different colors. So that is what we have in the pipeline. And another thing we're launching very soon is a blog. It's called the Sisterhood Project. And it's on the basis that one woman's story becomes another woman's survival guide. So we're going to be sharing a load of inspiring stories of women that are facing the challenges that all of us women face, whether that be infertility, body hate, alcoholism, health issues. So, these are the sort of things we want to bring out, and really the message is how you speak to yourself throughout these experiences, can really change your life and the outcome.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Sign me up. And people would find all of this either via Instagram or from Instagram to the website. But where would you direct people to go and buy their first Bham Powerpants, which of course everyone should do who's listening, or just even to get onto the blog so they can, watch and listen to these amazing stories? Like, where would you direct them, Kylie?
Yeah, that will all be on our website, which is powerpants.com.au.
Powerpants.com.au. Okay, fantastic. All right, so I'm going to drop into a couple of quick, fast questions to finish us off. The first one is, well, it's not so much a fast question, it might take you a while to answer it, but what would be, looking back, what would be the most pivotal book that has, you think, taught you something? It can be inside business or outside business, relationships, and you mentioned Brene, so I don't know, yes. But what would be your go-to? And you can have 3 if you like, because I don't believe in limiting ourselves.
Yeah, okay. Well, yeah, look, Brene, I mean, that woman has changed my life. And the comment of, do you want to sit in the cheap seats, or do you want to be in the arena? And when I read through that, I want to be in the arena, but also, talking through that shame, and it's helped me really understand a lot of these limiting beliefs that I've had. And I've done a huge amount of work on myself since, reading her books. They've really opened my eyes to the way I want to live my life. And probably my favorite is still the first one I read, Daring Greatly.
Yeah, Daring Greatly by Brene Brown, brilliant. And her Netflix original is also worth the watch, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And her TED Talks, basically anything that her name is on, pick up, read, and you won't go wrong. What about, would you say, in your life, what was an experience that was really pivotal for you, that just, was a lesson or a learning, could have been young or old, but just for you personally, you're like, that left an indelible mark that strengthened me or affirmed me or hit me at the time, but later I can see it was a benefit? Like, just a moment in time in your life.
Oh, look, I think what happened with my ex was probably the biggest pivot in my entire life, and it has changed my life. And a lot of people say to me, don't you wish that didn't happen, or don't you wish you didn't spend so many years with him, or that you changed, and it was all just part of my journey. And had I not gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be able to understand and help the women that I'm able to help through this brand. So, that was just such a significant turning point in my life. But, there's always little things I will notice. I'm deeply reflective, and I I will notice my emotions. On my desk, I actually have a little picture of someone swimming in the ocean, and it says being in your thoughts, and then there's someone in a boat in the calm water saying observing your thoughts. Yes. And that's really, I will notice things that happen in my body in a particular situation, or how I felt and responded, and I will take a minute to go, why am I feeling this way, and just digging into the belief behind that. And I'll give an example. I was just walking along Manly Beach with my son one day, and a man said to me, he was on one of those balancing strings, and he said, do you want to have a turn, to my son? And he was like a little bit shy, and he suggested, oh, maybe mum would like to have a turn. And I said, no, I wouldn't want to do that. And we kept walking, and I thought to myself, why didn't I do that? And as I reflected, I thought, growing up, my mum never did anything embarrassing. She wouldn't put herself out of her comfort zone. I'm happy to say she embarrasses herself for the sake of my kids all of the time now. Yeah. But I just realized that was just, mums don't do those kind of things. Yeah. Mums don't embarrass themselves. And just from the point of recognizing that, I have danced in the streets. Yeah. I've, jumped into play centers. I get myself in there involved with my kids now.
I love that. Yeah. Because the thing about parenting that's sometimes a tough pill to swallow is children don't listen to what we say. They do watch who we be. It is monkey see, monkey do. And I think you're right. Being the observer of our way of being is the first step, and without judgment, right? Like, yeah, there I was. Here's the thought I had. Mums don't do that. And then in that moment of awareness, we get to choose. Will I go back and just embarrass myself, or will I just in this moment acknowledge it? And I don't have to every time be bigger than the fear, but if I can see it more and more every time, then I'm less at the mercy, drowning in it, like you said, in the ocean, which is so true. That's beautiful. So I also love what you said when people say to you, do you wish it didn't happen? Because that happens a lot, right? And inside careers, it's even like, but you've already spent 10 years in this career you hate. Like, just think about that for a second. So why would you want to have wasted those 10 years of hating your job? Keep reminding you that that's the point of it. So people go, I'll just do another 20 years because A, I don't want to be embarrassed that I made the quote unquote wrong decision. And B, I'll spend another 20 years hating something instead of admitting that I already spent 10 years hating something. Like, it's crazy logic when you look at it like that. But that breakdown is ultimately the breakthrough. And I love that so often with the women I work with and for myself, 100%. Every time I lose myself or stray from myself, it is a greater knowing, awareness, and resolution that brings me back to myself. It is only when we lose ourselves that we can know through the contrast of the experience what it is to be in sovereignty with your soul. Because how else do we know? How do we know night from day unless we have been in the alternative experience? So I can only imagine that, that knowing of shit, I gave my truth to someone else. I let someone else dictate my worth just for a moment, just for a period, and I won't do that again. I will not do that again. Just like that hot fire, right? We don't touch it again. Yeah. So I love it. All right. Now, super lighthearted, but if you could have one food or one meal for the rest of your life and that's it, it can't be any other meal or any other food, what are you locking in?
Sushi.
Sushi. Any particular favorite kind of sushi?
Oh, what's your go-to? Sashimi. I love Japanese food. It's my absolute favorite.
Do you? That's awesome.
And Japanese beer.
My dad he buys some giant big can of something or other. I buy it from when I love him a lot, which is, I should buy it more for him, but he loves it too. Yes. Okay. Yeah. And then if we could take a message from your mouth and we could put it into a little earwig into everyone on the planet, and it's just a soundbite and it's all you get to say to them. And it would be a summation of your life so far, as in the learnings, the wisdom. And it's like, guys, I figured it out, or I haven't figured it out, but so far what I really feel might be true. And what's really important that we all just know is, and then they get this little message, and it's your little piece of wisdom into the collective wisdom. What would you want people to really know?
I guess it would be to believe in themselves.
Yeah,
I
believe in
think
yourself.
it's really knowing that we are all human, we are all the same. I know that so many people compare themselves to others, but it's the people they're comparing themselves to are feeling the same insecurities, and we're all in the same boat. And if we all believe in ourselves, we can all really be our best version.
Yes, yes. And, what you've been saying really the whole way through is how we speak to ourselves really matters. And I think further to that, what your blog sounds like it's doing and what you've done today, so thank you, is when we share our stories, the things that aren't on, maybe the front page of, what we show to the world every day. In doing that, we give people an insight behind, the smoke in the mirrors or behind the closed doors. And we realize that, like you say, we are all in the same experience. We do all hold the same fears. And it isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but that's okay. That is okay. And that's also, it's in that dark soil that the seeds grow and the trees bloom, and it's all welcome, right? It's all part of it. So what would be your biggest tip for people listening it's like you found this works for you. It's like the one thing you do that you would recommend for your elevating health and energy. How would you recommend people do that? One tip.
Yeah, look, I think it's having some healthy habits in your life. And it sounds simple, but, I'll introduce a new healthy habit in my life every few months. Something as simple as waking up and the first thing you do is drink a huge amount of water, just to clear your system and wake you up. That's super healthy. But things like yoga, using positive affirmations, and meditation, they're all very healthy habits that I do almost every day.
Yeah. Yes. Couldn't agree more. They are all brilliant. And also a lot of the ones you mentioned really step us out of that minefield of the mind, which is where we can get a little cray cray and a little anxious and lose touch with that, which we really are. So I agree. And then what would be your number one tip for increasing happiness? What works for you to increase your happiness?
Look, I think it is gratitude. And I would say in any moment, you can be overwhelmed by unsettling thoughts. It's to stop yourself and say, what's a more helpful way to look at this situation? What's the best outcome from here? And what am I grateful for? And that can totally turn around my mood.
100% turned around. And one of my favorite quotes from the amazing Marianne Williamson is that a miracle is just a change in perspective. And I remind myself of that all the time. There is a miracle waiting here. We just need to see this differently. Love it, love it. Now, what about to elevate your heartfulness?
Look, I think it's being truly present with the people you love and really feeling it. I mean, I sometimes hold my children and I just feel full of love and warmth. And I do it with my husband too, but my little ones love the cuddles. And, it just energizes me and makes me feel happy. I guess that's another happiness hack.
Yes, it is.
Just really feel the love.
Yeah, open that heart space. I love it. And then what about for elevating our fullest and truest expression in the world? Like how do you think people could dial that up?
I guess it is sharing your story.
Yeah.
The best way to connect with your purpose and sharing that with others is through story.
Yeah, I agree. And in lots of my programs, we address things like that. And what I would say, though, for anyone listening is like, what does that mean? Well, particularly around if you want to shift some serious energy and access more life force in your being, the shifting of the shame story. So the secret, look where you hold secrets, look where you wouldn't want people to know a thing. And now that doesn't mean you need to go and do a Facebook Live and tell the entire planet about it. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that. But it might mean telling someone, even a helpline, Call up a helpline. There's plenty of them, and say, hey, my husband beats me and I don't know what to do about it. And that stranger will help you. And in that moment, in voicing that out, you have unplugged what we call blocked light, which will feel like a shadow. But remember, the only reason there is shadow is because light is hitting something. So it's just light waiting to be unfolded. So in sharing your story, even if it's with a stranger, sometimes it's easier to share it with a stranger. And then maybe an inner circle. And then maybe a little bit more. But what I've certainly learned about the secrets that I used to hold shame around is the more I speak them, the less power they have over me. It's like the boogie monster. It's not real. It only has the meaning because you gave it the meaning. So sharing that secret will free you. And then, like just on that, sometimes something really beautiful happens. You can't lose when you share a secret if you keep holding the intention of your wholeness being the outcome, because there have been times where I have shared a secret with someone really hoping that they would meet me with love and acceptance, but afraid they wouldn't. And one time in particular, which was really big and pivotal in my life, they didn't meet me with love and acceptance. In fact, they met me with far more judgment than even I thought they could have. And the reason I share that is because when that occurred, there was an awakening within me, which I had been waiting for. That was a defense of me, instead of, so often we are, the victim and the perpetrator within ourselves, right? We judge ourselves for being the victim. We're beating on ourselves. How dare you be the victim? And therefore making ourselves more the victim. But when I shared that secret and the person really did judge me and started beating on me, there was this other energy in me that came up and said, how dare you? How dare you judge her for a behavioral reflex, for a coping mechanism because she's hurt? And suddenly I found my power again. So it's interesting what will unfold if your intention is to release it. It doesn't really matter what happens out there, but the releasing will still deliver, I really do believe, a gift to you. But baby steps, baby steps. If it feels hard, call up a helpline, tell a stranger, if that feels easier. Kylie, thank you so much for this chat today. I feel like, we kind of went everywhere, from, domestic violence right through to the issues of entrepreneurial launch. But, that's the spectrum, right? We get to dance in the spectrum, all of us, whether we're entrepreneurs at work and dealing with work stuff and family, and we all have our past too. And I love one of the things I really took from our conversation today is remembering to update our identity. Remember, the story can be the story, but it's the story from before. Don't bring it with you and keep it alive. Use it to evolve into your higher self and your higher self and your higher self, which you have so beautifully done. And your message with Bham Powerpants is just, for me, I just love it. I just love it. I love what it represents. And I think everyone should go buy themselves a pair, and we should have a Bham Powerpants party online. Yay. Dance around in our affirmed knickers. I think it should happen. We should make it real.
Yeah, let's do it.
Is there anything else you would like to, leave or comment on or let us know about before we wrap up?
No, look, thanks for having me. It's been great to chat. And, if someone is looking for that person to share their story, so many women have connected with me with their stories through the brand. And, particularly if it is a relationship, I'm here. This is the reason for the business, is to help women to find their power. So, let me be those ears.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I can feel your heart through that. So yes, we are all in this together, and all of us is welcome, and we're not broken, but we do have lessons to learn in life and to unfold them. So on that note, thank you. And anyone listening, as always, if this was helpful, or if you have questions, comment, leave a takeaway, what your lesson and your learning was, tag Kylie or myself, and we will get back to it. Or take a screenshot, share it on social media, send it to a friend that might also, if you might have an inkling, if something is telling you they need to hear it, don't question that, just send it. Just say, I listened to this today, you might like it. And us sharing our stories helps other people. It just does. I agree. All right. We will wrap it up. I kind of don't want to say goodbye because I'm just so in this love bubble of juiciness, but I know that I will see you again, and we'll chat more about collaborations. I've already got something I want to talk to you about, so we'll do that offline. But for everyone else listening, thank you so much for joining us today on the episode. Big loves. I see you, I am you, I love you, and just remember, the world needs you to magnify your more and to live your light, because that is what you were here to do. See you next week.